All right, well, welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to be talking about the principles of the Constitution. We are going to kind of break them down and learn a little bit about what makes the Constitution so great and clarify a few things about our government. I'm really excited about this because these are some of the most fascinating kind of thoughts and concepts relating to our government. They're the framework, they're the structure. So really excited about this. Can't wait to get into it with you today. This lesson was covered on, on Tuesday the 7th, February the 7th, and also on Wednesday, February the 8th. So if you missed either one of those 2 days, this would have been the lesson that we covered and talked about. A few of my classes didn't get all the way through the notes. We're going to finish that tomorrow or the next day, depending on if you're A day or B day. But definitely this is something, if you missed or if you want to review those days, this is the day that you'd want to do that. So the bell work for today, and this was for the 8th. Again, this also would have been for the 7th, but I think it was a different bell work yesterday. Anyway, for today, this is the bell work that you need to do if you missed either one of those 2 days. Last class, we talked about 3 priority laws. So if you missed it, the last bell work that we did was about the 3 laws. If you were creating a government, what 3 laws would you want, and what would they, what would be your priority in those laws? Today, what I'm wanting to ask is, what kind of government would you have? Would you have a democracy? Would you have a monarchy? Would you have some other form of government? And I want you to write that down and tell me why. So go ahead and pause the video and tell me why you would want the government that you would want, and which one that would be. So go ahead and pause it now. All right. So this is a great question. I want to know your answer because a lot of times we have a misunderstanding in this country of what kind of government we even have. And it was a fun question to ask during the classes. So let's go ahead and move on. Today, again, we're going to talk about the 7 key concepts in the U.S. Constitution. We are going to complete some worksheets. The main worksheet we're going to do today is over the checks and balances. Again, these will be sent via remind to everyone, and we will also, I'll be able to email them. So if you need it, let me know. I can email you a copy, or you can come by and pick a copy up for me at any point in any time. And that's it. And then we will take an open note quiz. We haven't taken it. None of my classes have taken it yet, but we will do it tomorrow and the next day, depending, again, if you're A day or B day. So the next very class we have after this is posted, we will have that quiz. Okay, we're going to move through these slideshows. There's a lot of extra slideshows that we need to move through because not all of them apply to everybody. We did go over the vocabulary just briefly, enough for me to know that not a lot of it stuck in people's minds. So we will be doing a little bit of vocabulary work as the class goes on in this next week. Please study your vocabulary. That can't be overstated. This next part, again, we get into the main meat of it, the main part of talking about the fundamental key concepts in the Constitution. So this is Chapter 9, Lesson 1, Our Constitution. 7 key principles. We're going to talk about them all at one time. I'm going to list them for you, and then after we list them, we're going to break them apart and kind of explain what they mean. So let's just kind of breeze through it and go through the list. The first one is popular sovereignty. It's kind of a weird word, but it's 3 syllables, even though there's so many letters. I break it up. This is how I break it up when I tell people how to pronounce it, the way we pronounce it in the United States. Sovereignty. Sovereignty. There's a few more little nuances to it, sovereignty, but really, if you could say sovereignty, that's how, we pronounce it. That's kind of the acceptable way. So popular sovereignty. Second one is republicanism. Now, this isn't talking about Democrats and Republicans. This is a belief system in what it means to be a republic. And it is a key foundational principle in our Constitution, that being a republic. We'll talk about what ism means and all of that kind of stuff. But and I guess we could talk about it now. So ism, anytime you see ism as a suffix like that, a suffix is an addition to the word at the end. So republicanism, it's talking about a belief or a support or a thought or idea system related to whatever it's talking about. So republicanism is the belief in a republican government or a republic, right? That's what that ism means. Limited government is our third one. It's talking about limiting the power of the government, but we refer to that as a limited government. Federalism, we have talked about before. Federalism, that separation of powers between the state and the federal level. We'll talk about that again more later, but that's the fourth key principle that we mentioned today. Separation of powers. So this is not just between the federal government and the state government, but this is separating within the federal government between the different branches, separating those powers out. Checks and balances, making sure that there is really no head. And that was something one of my classes, they kind of helped me to point out. They were asking some questions, and understand there is no head to our government. I know we look at the president as the head of the government, but intentionally by the framers of the Constitution, there is no head of our government. No one branch is supposed to be more powerful than the other. No one is in charge, quote unquote. You kind of see me doing air quotes. No one is in charge. Everyone can put everyone else in check. Even the government, with the president. I mean, even with the president, decisions that the president makes aren't final law. They can be undone by other branches. And it's something we're even seeing playing out. We're seeing it being played out in our country right now. And the last one is individual rights. We'll talk about this really at length, not even just today, but as we go on into Friday and the next week, talking about those individual rights. Okay, so there's the 7. My question to you is this: what does it mean to be popular? Or even let me ask it this way: who determines if a person is popular? And this is society. This is in the Hollywood and music. How do we determine if a person is popular? How do we determine if someone at school is popular, or someone at work is popular, or church? Who determines? Who makes that determination? Does the person themselves make the determination? I'm going to say no. The way you can tell if somebody's popular is people, society. The population as a whole determines if somebody is popular. And that's where we actually get the word. The word popular means the people, the population, the normal citizen. That's why we call them popular. What we're saying is these people have the approval, this person, let's say it's Will Smith or Taylor Swift or Justin Bieber, however weird that is that he's popular. But, basically saying that that these people have gained the approval of the population, hence they are popular. And the only reason I bring that up is because I want you to understand the definition of the word popular so you'll understand popular sovereignty. The word sovereignty means having absolute, supreme, ultimate power and authority. In your household, your parents have absolute authority. They're going to tell you what is the rule and how you're supposed to live your life in their household. That's what they do. So just to get you to understand, a king has absolute authority, ultimate power in their government, in their kingdom. So let's put these two together. Popular sovereignty then is when the people are ultimately holding all of the power. And in our country, the way that our nation was designed, people, the ordinary citizens, the people as a whole, our nation as a whole, power is in the hands of the people. All governmental power is derived or taken from the people. We are the ones that give the government authority over us. That is a fundamental principle of our government and something we need to understand. And one of the best ways that we can exercise that is through our votes. Your vote counts. People have that power through our vote to elect representatives, to make decisions, to change the government. All of that power rests in the hands of the people. We can do it if we really wanted to. So don't ever think your vote does not count or you should not vote. It is very, very important. Okay, the big question, and this was all in all my classes, this was kind of a key point to make, and it's this. True or false? The United States of America is a democracy. What do you think? Do you think it's a democracy? Do you think it's not? Now, I asked my kids to vote on this. I asked my students to vote on this. And it's kind of interesting to hear the answer because some people were adamant, man, we're a democracy. But the truth is that we are not a democracy. Matter of fact, democracy is not only are we not a democracy, but democracy is not the best form of government. Our rights would not be protected under democracy. Now think about this. Every morning, we all gather together at school and we say our Pledge of Allegiance. We pledge our allegiance to the flag. Now, let me tell you what that says if you have forgotten. Sometimes we say things we don't even understand why, but it says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Right? Our flag represents and stands for a republic. We don't get up there and say, well, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the democracy for which it stands. We don't say that. We say to the republic because it's telling us we have a republic, not a democracy. In a democracy, the majority of the people, whatever they decide, that's the way it's going to be. And if the majority of the people decide that we're going to violate somebody's rights, then that's what it's going to be because majority rules. So your rights are not protected in a pure democracy. Your rights are only protected if there is a constitution that is our government. It's created by a constitution and it protects our rights. That's the only way that we're going to have protected rights. And so in this country, that's the way it is. Now, I have a couple of videos that I have shown. I'm not going to show them for copyright purposes, but here is the link. You can go ahead and pause this, rewind it, pause it, and link to this video. It's a great video. I have another one just like it, but go ahead and write this down. You can pause it, write it down, go watch this video, and then come back to this because it is so worth it for you to see this, to understand what I'm trying to say. Our founding fathers themselves said democracy is not good. It's not going to cause anything but chaos. So definitely go watch that video. But in our country, people choose their representatives. Okay, they choose their representatives. And once the representatives are chosen, they make decisions for the people. The representatives make decisions for us. If there's a vote for a law, all the people in the country are not going to the polls to vote for every single law. We trust our representatives are going to do that. We're not doing that. We want our representatives to do it. So it's not a democracy. I know we want to say it's a democracy. We live in a democracy. We don't. We don't go vote for every single stinking thing that happens. That's what our representatives are for. We go to work. We do our job. We trust that they're going to make the best decision possible. We choose our representatives, but that's what a republic is. A republic is where we go to the polls, we elect our representatives, and then we trust that they're going to make decisions for us. Now, just that part, that's something called a representative democracy. But once you add a written constitution in there, it creates a limit. And now the government, even our representatives, can't do anything they want to. Our representatives have to do only they're able to do only what our Constitution says they can do. They're limited. That's that limited government again. We have a republic in this country because that's really the best way that our rights can be protected. Here's the other video. And again, pause this so that you can write this down. I'll try to provide the link in the description below for these videos, but definitely you want to watch these videos. This one is actually really good. It goes in depth about why we're a republic, why we're not a democracy, and that our founding fathers did that on purpose. So sorry if I bursted your bubble and that we are not a democracy, but no, please sound intelligent and educated. And if somebody says, well, we live in a democracy, say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, I don't disagree with you, but in your main point, but in your detail, you need a little work. We are a republic. All right, so funny story. Actually, I paused the video and I recorded about 20 more minutes of it and realized, oh my gosh, I forgot to hit play again, and so recorded 20 minutes about unnecessarily or just as practice. So I don't think anybody's surprised that Mr. Mendoza did that. I just wanted to be a little transparent and say, my bad. So, okay, well, moving on. Let's go ahead and continue with this. Limited government. This idea that our government has limited powers. People have rights that cannot be taken away. You know, we talked about that the best way for our rights to be protected is by limiting the government, limiting it by a constitution, right? Our Constitution protects us and protects those rights from being taken away. And that's a good thing. We like that. And we limit the government because we only give away certain amounts of our rights. See, if you give rights to the people, you're in effect denying the government authority or power. You're saying this is an area that you cannot touch. You can't do this. You have a limited authority in this area because that's my right. You know, the government can't stop me from exercising my freedom of religion. If I want to practice my religion and it's not harming anybody else, the government can't tell me to stop. See, that's authority that is taken away from the government. And the government, basically this idea of limited government says that the government only has the rights that we, the people, give the government. And that's an awesome idea. And they are limited by a document that we put in place called the Constitution, right? That's what we talked about before, that they are limited by that document. This is the idea of popular sovereignty coming back, that we, the people, hold the ultimate power. We have that power and that idea of popular sovereignty. It's not a monarchy. It's not an authoritarian dictatorship. It is a popular sovereignty nation where people hold all the authority, and we authorize the government to do things on our behalf and to do things for our benefit. But that doesn't mean that the government is all powerful and controls us and what we do. It doesn't work that way. Okay. The idea of federalism, we've talked about it before. I'm not going to go in depth about it right now, but I will say that the powers are divided, right? The powers are divided between the federal government and the states. We've talked about this in the last few lessons about this idea of federalism. But that's the way that it's structured. Now, again, that ism suffix means that you believe in something or the idea of something. So this is the belief or idea that the federal government should be the most powerful in that relationship of the states. If you looked at the Constitution, and we'll do that this week and next week, we're going to look at the Constitution and what it says. But if you were to do that, you'd see that there are powers listed, basically authority given to the national government, saying that the national federal government can do, number one, can do this. Number two, it can do that. Number three, it can do this. So that's what the federal government can do. If you look at that numbered list, okay, we call that numbered list the enumerated powers. That word enumerated means numbered. We numbered those powers. That's what the word enumerated means if you look it up in the dictionary. It means to number something or put it in a numbered list. And so this is the numbered list of authorities or powers given to the national government, like the power to make money, to regulate trade, to have a military, courts, all that. That's all stuff. It's powers given to the federal government. Now the states have their government or their powers as well. We call those reserve powers because we're reserving them for the independent states. Things like schools, that's a state issue, right? Schools, that's overseen by the state. Marriage and divorce laws, that is overseen by states. Each state is a little bit different in their divorce laws. Trade within the borders, that's all state issues. The federal government doesn't have a place in that. But then there's a special section of laws, some laws that, if you can think of a Venn diagram, those two circles overlapping a little bit, there's some that are just federal, some that are just state, but then there's those laws that apply to both of them, and those are called concurrent powers. these powers that belong to both the state government and the federal government. They're overlapping, right? You can be taxed by the state government and the federal government. You can have a court in the state court or federal court. You can have a trial. Those are concurrent powers. They run at the same time together. They can both do it at the same time. And again, that idea of federalism at its core says that the Constitution, the national government, is the supreme law of the land. So the state government cannot do anything that the U.S. Constitution says is illegal or whatever. They cannot contradict each other. If they contradict, if the states say one thing, the Constitution says something else, the Constitution wins every time, and the state would have to change its law. All right, separation of powers. The government's authority, if you can think of 100% of government authority, it is divided into three parts. Not equal parts, but pretty much as equal as they can be within our governmental system. But there is all the government, there is a division between the legislative, executive, and judicial branch. There is no king. One of the things that we were talking about in class today actually was that there is no head of our government. The president isn't all powerful, right? If he signs an executive order, a judge can cancel that out. And we've seen that even recently in the past week or two. The legislative branch can write a law and propose it to him. The president can veto it, and you're thinking, oh, well, he has the final say. No, he doesn't. The legislative branch can actually come back and get a vote together in both houses and can counteract and cancel out that veto and do it anyway, and it would be law. So even the president isn't all powerful, 100% powerful, regardless of what he thinks. We have checks and balances, this idea of checks and balances in our nation. The executive branch, think of the president, the military, the police force, the treasury, money, all those things belong to the executive branch. The judicial branch, that's everything dealing with the courts and judges, Supreme Court, all the interpreting the law area, that's all the judicial branch. The legislative branch, that's the Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives, making decisions, making laws, debating, that's what they do. And what I did in class is I gave you a handout, and this is what the handout looks like, one side of it. And it has all these relationships. And understand that there's all these relationships between the executive branch and the legislative branch where they can contradict each other. Just like I was telling you before, the president can veto, but the legislative branch can override that veto. If the president breaks the law, the legislative branch, the Congress, can actually impeach him and fire him, really. But if the legislative branch makes a weird law that the president doesn't like, he can veto. So there's all these checks and balances between the president and the judicial branch. And I mentioned one of those examples before. The legislative branch and the judicial branch, Supreme Court and Congress, they have checks on each other as well, and you can read through those. Again, pick up a handout from me if you don't have a printer or if you just want to save yourself some time. But on the other side of that handout, there are some questions. And you'll see the three columns of the Congress, the President, and Supreme Court. Your assignment, okay, your assignment, every class needs to do this. Your assignment, if you missed, is to answer all 10 of those questions at the bottom of this worksheet that looks like that. All 10 of those questions need to be answered and handed in for a grade. So if you missed, you need to do your bell work and you need to do these 10 questions, turn it in, so that I can give you credit for that. Otherwise, it's going to be a zero. It's going to be a zero. Okay, let's talk about individual rights. Individual rights. We have the right to freedom of religion. Okay, these are all First Amendment rights. Now, we have other rights, but let's stick with these for now. Just the First Amendment, kind of big ones. The government cannot deny us our freedom to exercise our religion how we see fit. We have a freedom of speech. Right? We can say what we want to say, even if the government doesn't like it. We can talk trash about the president and say, I don't like what the president said. Sure don't. I don't like what our senators are doing over there. There's a bunch of lazy people, and I can talk trash all I want to. As long as I don't threaten them or try to do anything illegal, I can say whatever I want, and it's okay. I don't have to agree with the government. My right to do that is protected. It's protected. We have the freedom to assemble, right? To get together. We can assemble to protest. I can assemble to go to church, right? We can get together, not just an individual worship, but I can worship corporately with other people. We can riot. As long as I'm not throwing rocks at the police or burning limousines, I can get together and assemble. Now, the government can tell you how you can assemble and when you can assemble, right? It's manner and place, the manner you can do it in, and the places you can do it at, the time and place, right? They tell you when to do it and how to do it. They can tell you when and how, but they can't stop you. If you have a desire to do that and you go through the proper channels, you absolutely have a right to do that. We have a right to bear arms, right to weapon. Again, the government can tell you when you can carry it and where you can carry it, but you can possess a firearm. You can own it. You have that right. You have that right. You also have the right to a speedy trial and a trial by jury. Speedy and public trial. Now, depending on what kind of a trial it is, if it's a murder trial, it may take longer. You may not have a trial for 6 months, maybe even up to a year. But you have the right to a trial. They can't deny you that if you request one or if it's warranted. You have that right. You also have the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures from government and from cruel and unusual punishment. We'll talk about these in detail later. I'm just kind of going over the surface idea of them. But unreasonable. If you're standing on a street corner, okay, let's be clear about this. You're standing on a street corner and it's dark, it's late at night, it's dark, you're standing with a couple of your buddies, standing on the street corner, and every now and then you have somebody walk up, kind of shake your hand and walk away. Another person comes up, shakes your hand, and walks away. Another person comes up, shakes your hand, and walks away. And this is happening pretty steady throughout the night, and the police is watching you. They're going to think you're selling drugs, and so that is a reasonable search and seizure. That's okay. That's not profiling. They're just looking and seeing your behavior. Your behavior is a little wonky, and they're going to hit you, not hit you physically, but they're going to stop you and say, hey, what's going on here? What are you doing? Okay, spread your legs. Let me search you, search your bag, whatever. Now, if you're walking to school in the morning, it's 7:30 in the morning, you have a backpack on your shoulder, and you're walking to school. You're a block away from the school, walking that direction, and a police officer says, well, you were suspicious. Okay, well, I don't know that that's suspicious. That looks pretty normal to me. Well, that's unreasonable. They had no reason to pull you over, no reason to search you. So that might be an issue there. And I hope that makes sense. All right. That's what we're going to talk about, individual rights, for today. What I want to move on to now, and this is going to kind of wrap up what we're talking about, but this is amending. How do you change the Constitution? Right? How do you change it? How do you fix something if it's broken? When we first passed the Constitution and it first passed into law, slaves counted as 3/5 of a person. Slavery was okay, and they counted as 3/5 of a person. That's not right, so we changed it. Eventually, we abolished slavery in the United States, and we said that that they're whole people, they are people, and they have rights. No matter what color you are, you have rights. We've decided that. We've passed those amendments. How do you make those amendments? How do you make those changes? Well, in the Constitution, there are clauses, there are places in there that describe how to change the Constitution, because the framers knew we needed to be able to adapt to different challenges that came our way. And they knew that. We were going to need to be flexible and to adapt. So there are some powers that are implied. Right? We talked about the enumerated powers. We talked about the reserve powers. We talked about concurrent powers. But there are powers that aren't even written word for word in the Constitution. But they're implied by what is there. Right? If you read it, they're like, well, a reasonable person would know that this is a power that you have as the government. And the government has exercised what they call implied powers. But if I'm going to change the government, I'm going to change the Constitution for whatever reason, there are two ways to propose an amendment And there are two ways to ratify or approve an amendment. Two ways to propose it, two ways to ratify it. The first way to propose it is to propose an amendment with a 2/3 vote in each house in Congress. So if 2/3 of the Senate say, yes, we want to propose this amendment, 2/3 of the House say, yes, we want to propose this amendment, then it's proposed and it goes through the process. Or you can have the states vote, right? A national constitutional convention called by Congress at the request of 2/3 of the state legislature. So 2/3 of the states get together and say, we want this amendment, then it can be proposed for a vote. Now, when it comes to passing it and making it an official amendment to the Constitution, there are two ways it can be ratified. The first way is by a 3/4 majority of the states. So if all the states, 3/4 of the states, 3/4 of the states vote and say, yes, we want this amendment to be passed into law, then it's official. Or if there are special ratifying conventions in the states, they could pull, so either the state legislatures or special conventions can be called, and if 3/4 of those happen, then it can be proposed, or it can actually be ratified into law. So those are the two ways it can be proposed and two ways it can be ratified. And we will talk about this again at length. This is just an overview to begin. So what I want you to do now is just kind of review your notes and kind of review what is popular sovereignty. Well, popular sovereignty is where the people hold the ultimate power. It's that idea, right? What is republicanism? Guys, remember, this is a fundamental bedrock that we are not a democracy. We are a republic where we have a government where elected representatives, elected of the people, go and make decisions, and then those people are then limited by the Constitution, which protects our individual rights. So important to know that. Know what the enumerated powers are. That's that numbered list of powers, and that there are powers that are implied. They're not specifically there, but they are implied. At this point, we're going to take a quiz. This is an open note quiz. I just want to make sure that you were paying attention and not just writing the words down, but you actually understood it. And so we're not going to take the time there, but that's the notes for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. And again, I'm going to try to put the links to those videos in the box below. So please check those out and keep these in your folders. All right, keep these in your folders, these notes, and we will continue to talk and review for your test, which is going to be next week. All right, thanks for visiting. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you later. I love you guys. Bye.